Hello and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. I'm your host for today, Simon Hodgkins. Delighted to be joined by Muhammad Ikram. Muhammad is a localization trailblazer. He's widely recognized, I think, at this stage for championing technology adoption in emerging markets. So, Muhammad, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thanks very much for inviting me.
I'm going to jump straight in. You're writing some really interesting articles a moment about a interesting topic.
Yeah.
Can you let's jump straight in. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in your world at the moment.
Yeah. So I work as a Urdu and Punjabi localization expert. So I've been noticing since I started work, like it's been 20 years since I started work in the localization industry. So in the very beginning, I started noticing that the work we are doing, nobody is using. Like I worked on the localization of Windows 8 into Urdu and Punjabi both, but nobody was using the localized version. Everybody was using international, the North American version, right? And I started probing into that. Why is that? The one answer was it's not very user friendly. And the language we are using is not practical. It's not the language people normally use when they are using these products. So I tried to talk to when I tried to talk about these, there was a strong friction, and kind of being just a freelance linguist, I found it impossible to change anything. There's a big hierarchy, and my voice was not reaching to the decision corners. So I went on, and then I joined Meta in 2018. And even as an in-house linguist, I found same friction because the changes were enormous and nobody was ready to go ahead with those changes. Like out of 5,400 and 4,500 glossary items, I wanted to change half of them. That's a huge. So when you multiply it with the number of strings, that goes into millions of strings that need to be revised, right? So that friction was the same that I experienced earlier during my work as a freelance linguist. So although after a lot of friction, I was able to implement the changes, and it had a effect on the other languages as well, to the whole of emerging markets. But when I came back, I tried to do the same again with some other projects I was working. Again, because the changes are so fundamental, are so huge that there is very little agreement to do that. So after a bit of frustration, and I decided, let's open the conversation. So I decided to write a series of articles. The very first article lays the argument in general, and then episodically, I have been writing about specific issues like how the vendor problem is kind of bulky and it doesn't allow the changes, and what is the philosophical why it happened and why it continued, and the linguistic side of the problem. And so far, I have written three articles. The number one lays the overall argument. Number two talks about the linguistic problem, in which I proposed a new linguistic theory, which tries to answer the question why the linguistic problems exist in the first place. And the third article talks about the vendor system and how we can make it more efficient, multiple layers of the system. And the fourth one, which will be published next month, will talk about the missed business opportunity because of lack of adoption of the technology.
Well, thank you, because you've definitely set the stage here. It's a fascinating topic, and just going back to what you said at the start about friction.
Yeah.
So, you were putting, and others, lots of work in, but it wasn't being adopted. Was
Yeah.
that initial friction just it wasn't reaching the right people within the organization? Was it, oh my goodness, this is a lot of work? Was it, well, it's predominantly it's coming out of the US and everybody knows these terms and it's okay the way it is. And
Yeah.
what do you think when you look back now were the major challenges you were sort of
Mhm.
coming up against?
Yeah. So the first one was In the very first article, I used the term the cultural blind spot. So I noticed when I tried to talk about it, I noticed that I was saying that these terms are not very practical, and I had a conversation with one of my manager that these Urdu is a new language in this domain. In the technology domain, and I am talking about 2014. So, but from their point of view, it wasn't new. So Urdu has been like since a decade and a half. Urdu has been in the system. So for them, so I was talking on a bigger scale. Like let's imagine the birth of technology during the Industrial Revolution. Right, the European languages evolved along the way. For languages like Urdu and Hindi, it is a new domain, because the rest of the technology that came before computers, nothing was localized. Cars, calculators, radios, right? Every other technology was not localized. So, and the computer was something that should have been, and it was, and Microsoft was right in that regard, because it is very intimate kind of product where you interact, and it's a very interactive kind of technology. It's not like you just ignite and kick and press the race button and go. It's not like cars or other technologies. So I noticed that so the people who are outside from this market, they are seeing it as Urdu is an established language in this domain. But then when I further looked into this, I learned another thing. So the kind of there was a consensus that maybe the people don't want the technology. Like these markets, people want the international version. There were several arguments, and several of the people were coming up with different kind of versions of the same argument. Okay, so people want to learn English. In South Asia, it's because British ruled this region for like 200 years, right? So English is a big part of the elite lifestyle. So one argument was people want to use the English version because they want to feel educated and they want to feel connected to the global system. The other argument was people are not interested in the. So the argument that the localized version is not practical, and there is something with the wrong with the language is not coming up. So that's why I started probing. Okay, why? And interestingly, my own community, the linguistic community, was kind of coming up with the argument. No, these are the proper translations, and we should stick to these. Eventually, people will adopt. So the one argument was people will. So like. Okay, 3 decades have almost 2.5 decades have passed, and people haven't adopted multiple versions of Windows and Android and all the products. So, but still, people are out there who say that just stick with these languages and these terms, and people will eventually adopt. So, it's kind of forcing people to adopt. We are not giving you another option, and you have to adopt. So, these are the observations that I came up with the linguistic theory that I proposed in my second article.
Yeah, thank you, Mohammed. I mean, you've been in the heart of this at companies and brands that you've mentioned, like Microsoft,
Yeah,
Google, Meta,
yeah,
and
yeah,
now Spotify, I think. So,
yeah,
you've been at this sort of cross section
yeah,
of this, I was going to say problem,
yeah,
opportunity,
yeah,
challenge.
mhm.
And you've spoken as well about breaking the purist
Yeah,
localization cycle. And
yeah,
maybe for some of our audience might be less familiar with that concept.
yeah.
This linguistic Puritanism, it's
Yeah,
challenging,
yeah,
but important for true digital inclusion. Could you tell us a
yeah.
bit about that?
So what is the Purist localization cycle? So in my second article, I proposed. I kind of it's an trying to. I'm trying to find the answer to the problem, and that's how I came up with this linguistic Puritanism. Linguistic Puritanism is when a linguistic community tries to adhere to a certain version of the language instead of its natural evolution. So, like Urdu and Hindi, I based my theory on the evolution of Urdu and Hindi. So during the mid 19th century, nationalist movement emerged in South Asia. Like Muslims and Hindus diverged into separate paths, and big reason was the language. Like Pakistan and India created on one of the biggest factor was the language. Right? They said Muslims have Urdu, and so. That certain version of the Hindi and Urdu is still people are trying to stick to that version of the language, right? And these both languages birthed out of the same language, the lingua franca of the central India during the Mughal period, right? And for example, if you a lot of the nouns and verbs and adjectives, if you use, for example, I'll explain it with a very simple. Okay, who is the prime minister, right? If we use the Hindi word for prime minister, that will become Hindi. And if we use the Persian word for prime minister, that would become Urdu. But underlying language is same, right? So a lot of the words in the vocabulary that Microsoft developed were that purest version of the vocabulary. So for Hindi, very pure Hindi words and very pure Urdu words. Basically, the Hindi words are from Sanskrit and the Urdu words are from Persian and Arabic. So if you, but in everyday language, people usually use the English words, right? For example, computer or keyboard or a lot of the terms. So if we use the English terms, like the transliteration of the English terms, so the distinction between the Urdu and Hindi disappears. It's the same language with a different script. So the kind of literary community as a whole, not just the linguistic community, literary community as a whole sticks to that version of the language, which they think is the pure language, and that language is tied to the identity of the people. And so you have to break away from that tradition to look beyond and use the usability and the practicality of the language in order to look beyond that. And most like if you are not a like kind of break, if you are not ready to break away, you are unable to see the problem. That's what happens. So I use the term like it puts a blindfold. It puts a blindfold, and like you are in the system and you are just going with the same terms and doing the same language. And the larger question, okay, people are rejecting these languages. So the answer is, okay, maybe it's new and eventually people will adopt these terms. That's the answer. That's the excuse. Usually the linguists that are working, they come up with.
Understood. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And do you feel as though these articles and your work has had a
Yeah.
ripple effect? Is it making changes? Is it are people resonating with what you're putting out there? Because this seems like a problem that's been around for a while, where some of the audience might think, "Oh no, we do this already. You know, we're
Mhm.
kind of we have this sorted out." Whereas you're coming at it and sort of reigniting that discussion and saying, "No, no, it's
Mhm.
been decades."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the adoption question is, as I told, the adoption question is there, and there are different kind of explanations for that. One is that people will adopt, right, and the other is that people are not interested in the localized version, which is like very wrong, because the English proper comprehension is only like 5 or 10% of the population. The real English comprehension exists only among the elite, the kids from the elite schools. They are like 5% maybe, right? The rest of the population struggles with the English comprehension, and the huge number of people who never went to school in Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh, right? So that explanation is wrong from the start. There are a lot of people who can't even read or understand English. So international version is kind of forced upon, and people are forced to. So that question was answered when I was at the Meta, and I saw that during the testing, the kind of terms that I was advocating, uh, huge number of the responders preferred those. So that was a clear indication. I knew all along that because when people communicate, people are using all the gadgets and all the terms related to those gadgets. They are directly adopted from the market. They are coming, right. If a product is coming from the Japanese market and they have the name in the Japanese, people will just with their local accent, people will just adopt it, and that's how it has been. And at the time of the when Microsoft decided to localize Windows, a lot of the terms have already been established, and now it's been already a generation since that time, and a lot more has been adopted. And people learn from the internet these days. It's not like somebody is writing the translations in the local language and people are learning in the a term is introduced in somewhere, and it travels very fast. Within a few days it reaches the whole of the globe. Uh, and another surprising factor for me was when I noticed that the main buttons of the Facebook product, right, and the like, comment, and share, and the very defining buttons, even the big European languages didn't attempt to translate those words. So it is like even in German, it was same comment and like and share, but we had the translations, and they were very bizarre. Like several hundred years old words no longer uses them, or some like words were even coined by the terminologists. And the problem is that those terms are based on the Persian syntax, because the words are coming from the Persian, and the syntax is, and that syntax doesn't resonate with the local people. It is alien to the local people.
No, it's a great point. And I suppose
Yeah,
what we're talking about here is that for all the advances that we see in the technology sector, many tech
yeah,
companies still struggle with balancing that linguistic authenticity.
yeah, yeah,
And I suppose user comprehension too, depending on the markets. And
yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking about culturally diverse regions. Like, how would you say that would be a better way of us approaching this? And I'm thinking of markets like South Asia, Africa, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
Any thoughts on that in terms of where we go from here, Mohammed?
Yeah, so I have a simple rule, a very simple rule. Okay, so these local languages are very well equipped to describe the human to human interaction. Okay, the local terms, the local translations will be an authority. And when it comes to human to technology interaction, a term related to internet, a term related to computer, a term related to mobile, just use the transliteration. For example, if you want to describe a love between humans, yes, Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi, wonderful, like so rich. Maybe even English can't do that because these words and these languages have a very huge vocabulary when it comes to the human to human interaction, right? But when it comes to technology, just use the transliteration. No need to go for bizarre kind of translations. It's very simple rule. It's not complicated.
Very good. And look, you've obviously shaped glossaries, style guides, you've worked
Yeah.
across various frameworks, multiple platforms and technology companies. If you were advising localization teams and colleagues today who are working on these products for underserved language communities, what sort of information would you share with them? What would be valuable for them to know?
Yes. So the first part is fix the vocabulary. Uh, and all the difficult translations that were brought by the linguistic institutes, because Microsoft partnered with the linguistic institutes, the Federal Linguistic Institute of Pakistan, India, and other countries. So first change those terms, like all the tech related terms. No need Most of the time, the English translation, the words, English words are good, and use the transliteration. Number two, uh, translate the whole of linguistic community, because the emerging markets have another problem, and I discussed this in very detail in the vendors problem, the third article. uh, the developed market has a very good supply for the very capable linguists. They are coming from the maybe most of them are have a degrees in translation localization, and they have worked on similar things, maybe not on computer, maybe somewhere somebody was working on Sony, or maybe even before that somebody was working on Philips products, right? But before Microsoft's Windows, nobody was working on the tech translations. So people didn't know how to do that. And computer changed something very fundamental, which most of the community doesn't understand. And I'm surprised. It's a very, for example, every style guide has a very fundamental first sentence, that is, we are supposed to follow the colloquial language, right? But people don't understand what does it mean. So the people are so in tune with the book language that they bring that language. And I have observed throughout my life, wherever when I became a senior enough to lead the projects, I tried to train people under me to think in a different way. But people are so in tune with the, because people, so how the linguistic system developed in these markets. So somebody was working on the, maybe as a translator in a digest or in a magazine, or was working on the book translation or something like that, or somebody was writing for a newspaper, and they started doing this. And that's, so they never questioned that this is very different. Well, like language of the computer is like a person interacting with the computer is like a person talking to another person. It's like a very real time live interaction. So the language should be the spoken language, not the written language. uh, th- Very few people understand. This is very fundamental, and very few people understand, surprisingly. And some people have been working like more than 20 years in the industry. They still don't know this difference. And it's a small but eventually huge difference, very huge difference. How you approach the language and how you treat the language, everything. Number two is retraining the entire whoever is on boarded. They have to, it's not just training, they have to be trained think differently. Translating for tech is not like regular translation. It is like a dialogue or a conversation. Like computer is asking for a command from the user, or the user is telling a problem to the computer, so it's conversational. That's the second distinction. And the third is whoever is leading any operation must have some kind of cultural and linguistic knowledge of the market. I have seen like uh, very random assigned, people are randomly assigned. Okay, so somebody is available, and like six South Asian languages is managing the next day. But that's not, because when for example a reviewer and a linguistic have a disagreement, and the person in charge has no idea what they are arguing about. So I think people, not necessarily from the same market, but people who have some kind of cultural and linguistic knowledge of the region, that would be helpful. I think these three things are very important, and these are the like the first steps, and there will be a lot more steps until until the global south adopt language in the local languages. It's a long road ahead.
Yeah, great three steps there. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing those. It made me think as you were talking, because I know your work sometimes goes beyond linguistics into areas of cultural
yeah,
impact, identity, and I know
yeah,
you're kind of the filmmaking sort of influence that I'm thinking
yeah,
about
yeah,
here. Now,
yeah.
tell us a bit about that. And does that filmmaking influence, has that approached the way that you think about localization and tech and storytelling in digital
Yeah, yeah,
environments?
yes, yes, of course. Because as a filmmaker, so when I started, I was it was my passion, like it was my hobby. So on weekends, I would go with my friends and take camera and try to shoot something, or in my spare time, right? And my inspiration, 10, 15 years ago, I was a lot younger, and like the Christopher Nolan fever was taking over the world, like after Inception and Dark Knight. So I was so much inspired by that, and I tried to make movies. My first ever short film that I tried to make, it was very amateurish, but it was inspired by Memento. And the second movie that I made, it was a bit better, and it got nominated in the Los Angeles Short Film Festival. It was inspired by Inception. So, but when I screened that movie in Pakistan, I realized that the cultural language that I'm using is very Western. So, and people are kind of only like elite cinematic people who are passionate, or who are like kind of cinema junkie people, right? Only they are relating to the movie. Normal people are not even understanding what is this about. So that kind of gave me a big hint. Culture is the most important thing, right? So, and that translates it into this as well, because a lot of the things, other than the language, the whole ecosystem is built in the left to right languages, right? And Urdu and other languages, especially in Pakistan, all are right to left, like Arabic or Persian. And that is a big problem, when simple translation does not turn out to be a good alternative, because sometimes the design is in a left to right. The translation does exist, but still the natural experience, because the whole UI has to be flipped. Otherwise, it turns out a very confusing experience for the user. So all these factors kind of taught me that the user, or the culture that we are localizing, is no, it's very simple that. So the biggest confusion was, people, when some companies try to switch through a prompt, people switched back to the English version instead of using the localized version. So the actual answer was people were not comfortable, but how it translated into the people who were making decision, they thought, okay, people don't want the localized version. The real answer was the localized version was not good enough. So people were somehow managing the international version, because at least they were used to, or they could ask. For example, if a person is not comfortable, that person can go to, an older person can go to their son or daughter and ask for help. Okay, I'm not able to save this number. Can you help me? Or I'm not able to find the number, or change my settings. So the localized version is, even the son, or the one who is helping, can't even figure out through that. So the localized version needs to be better than the international version from that user's perspective, right? And then it will translate into a real localized experience.
Yeah, I really like that. The localized version needs to be better than the
Yeah,
international version. I think
of
that's a
course.
that's a great takeaway.
Yeah,
Now, I'm going to wrap up with a question, but I think we're going to talk about it for a few minutes because it's
sure.
not a straightforward question.
Yeah,
You're writing these articles, they're on a really important topic. Culture
yeah,
is very much at the heart of it.
yeah,
And as you look ahead now,
yeah,
what are you thinking about as the next big opportunities or challenges? I'm thinking of AI too. When we add
yeah,
that on top of
yeah,
the problems and the opportunities that we've been
yeah,
talking about,
yeah,
it's kind of the data that the AI is trained on is feeding
yeah.
almost the same problem, right?
Mm.
So,
It's
what are you
multiplying.
thinking about when you think of the future and the opportunity to actually truly get this right and inclusive for billions of users in emerging
Yeah.
markets.
Yeah. So AI is gonna complicate the problem. That's why what kind of prompted me to write these articles. So I had the at the back of my head, I had this idea, maybe because AI is trained on real world data, right? So it's not like a small elite linguistic community is trying to dictate. Usually, the output that ChatGPT or the Gemini gives is very real language, because it is trained on the data that the real people are writing, and even I think the spoken language has data has been used. But I tested the ChatGPT into Urdu, and I saw the same terminology from the same Microsoft glossary 25 years ago. The translation for settings, and so it picked from the same. Maybe it studied the Windows localized version or Android or wherever. I said, okay, so now it is going into the AI as well. Uh, one of the thing that I see, one of the thing that I see is this wrong conclusion. That's why I'm writing these articles. This wrong conclusion, people don't want that. No, people want, if we provide them with good local versions, because these are the language people are talking, people are writing, people are speaking in their everyday language. So the tech products in these language will be lot more popular among the people, and people will be a lot more comfortable. And my hope is that the eventually the industry will gradually, it's a huge machine and it will take some time, but it will turn. And what I see, I see that the computer is becoming more and more intimate with the people, right? After it from table to pocket to in our on our eyes or on our wrist, right? So it's becoming more and more intimate, and the localization is becoming more important. So before the huge wave of next generation of computers, maybe it is glasses, as the Mark Zuckerberg says, or maybe a watch, or a wrist or whatever, or maybe a ring. The localization, the big tech gets the localization right in the emerging markets. That's my hope, because it's going to happen in next 5 years. And before that happens, before the mass adoption of the new generation of computers, my hope is the big tech will come around and fix this.
And it's a fascinating point because the generation that have grown up with computing and seen
Yeah,
mobile technology and seen
yeah,
computing and seen the introduction of AI.
yeah, yeah,
Um, the generation after that, after us, are quite used to swiping glass. They're quite used to speaking
yeah.
instead of typing. Do you think as more um, emerging markets communities start talking instead of typing, do you think the
Yeah,
spoken word will help the
yeah, yeah.
challenges here?
Yeah. So I think eventually this because the whole the second point that I told, that there are three things that need to be addressed. The second point is retranslating the whole linguistic community. So there are maybe thousands of individuals who are trained in this way of like purist localization model, and they need to be retrained, so the next wave could be fixed. But uh, coming to your point, it has to be initiated. It won't happen automatically. It's not like AI will do it. It has to be initiated, and somebody will make the decision. And for example, I think the next operating system will build on the existing ones, right? Upgrading these for the VR, XR, whatever. So until and these won't go away. Like it's not like after the mobile computers went away, and these will still be there for a long time. The traditional computers and the mobile phones. But fixing these will eventually translate into better versions of the next generation.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and it
Yeah.
illustrates what you said earlier, which is,
And just one small point, the next generation will have a lot more talking interaction with the user,
mm,
and the colloquial point will become even more important. And I think localization will expand. Now, the big tech is doing 120 languages. I think when it will be a purely a talking interaction with the computer, it will translate into like maybe few hundred language, 300, 400 language. Because, for example, if I talk about Urdu or Punjabi, if we travel 100 miles in any direction, it changes how people speak. So there will be a lot more variation of the same languages that it goes into hyper-localization. I firmly believe the next step is hyper-localization, like translation between dialects.
yeah, dialects, the hyper-localization
Yeah,
impact that hopefully this technology can help us with. But
yeah,
I was going to make the point that you said it earlier. When you're being served up by AI, the latest technology, an article that
mm,
you wrote 2.5 decades ago, it's just building on what we've been doing. It's not
yeah,
improving it, and hopefully, with the technology, with the advent of the new operating systems, the new devices, we
yeah.
get better at this. Last question, Mohammed. For people that want to read your articles, connect with you, find out more, where are you sending people to? Is it LinkedIn? Is it a website? What's the best place to share more?
LinkedIn and Medium.
Medium, yeah.
Yeah, they are available on both LinkedIn and Medium. And I hope to publish in the industry journals as well in the coming months.
Well, thank you for the great work that you're doing on this fascinating topic. I know it meets some resistance, it meets some shock. It's educating people, and it's really addressing a really fundamental, important topic that technology is brilliant, but it doesn't
Yeah,
have all the answers. And what a great champion for the human plus AI discussion, where you've got human experts that understand the cultural importance,
yeah,
bringing that to the forefront. But it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. Unfortunately, we're going to run out of time. We must come back and revisit this topic.
sure, sure.
I'm going to ask
Uh,
everybody who's watching or listening to us around the world to tune in again to see or listen to the next Vista Talk show, where once again we'll be discussing some interesting and fascinating topics with interesting people, just like Muhammad Ikram. But Muhammad, thank you for being a guest on the show. It's been my pleasure to talk to
Thank
you
you.
today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about all these important issues. Thank you very much.